autism awareness angel, making sure my wings protect the different, the stranger than. I'm a autism awareness angel. It's good, cause I'm cool with the unique behavior. I'm a autism awareness angel. Will you accept me? Cause I accept you. I'm a autism awareness angel, cause a view from the spectrum is a better point of view.
Hello, I'm Tally, and welcome back to Autism 30. Today on our podcast, we are speaking with Miss Tiffany MacInnis, Camp Director for Zajac Ranch for Children, located in Mission, British Columbia, Canada. She has a bachelor's degree in both music and music education and is currently completing her master's in developmental psychology. Her extensive experience of over 12 years include working as a teacher and educator with at-risk youth in nonprofit organizations, working with children who have chronic illnesses and disabilities in classrooms, after-school programs and respite care settings, and in ABA behavioral therapy sessions in communities across Canada. She has spent 14 years as a camper and a staff member at various camps across North America. She is a native from the province of Nova Scotia, and her long journey has led her to work across North America, leading her to Zajac Ranch for Children, where she has been working successfully for over a year now. Welcome, Tiffany.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, so glad you're here. How was Zajac Ranch for Children started? Can you give us a bit of the history?
Sure. So it was started by Mel Zajac, whose background is actually in construction and hotel management, but he has a long history of fundraising and donating to charities in the communities in which he's lived. And,
wonderful.
Yeah. And in 1987, two of his two sons died in separate sporting accidents. So he began the Mel Jr. and Marty Zajac Foundation because he wanted something positive to come out of that tragedy.
Which is really admirable, and I'm really sorry to hear that.
Yeah. So one of the first projects of the Mel Jr. and Marty Zajac Foundation was they helped to develop the BC Centre for Ability.
Which is a great organization.
Yeah. And then in 2004, he started the Zajac Ranch for Children, which was his most ambitious project, certainly. And it was his dream that there would be a facility for children who would not otherwise be able to attend summer camp and enjoy the experience of summer camp.
And I know many parents out there who are just newly diagnosed aren't aware of such wonderful programs, so it's great that he did start this camp.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, how long has it been in operation?
This will be our 13th summer.
Fantastic. Now, what attracted you to working at Zajac Ranch for Children?
Well, like you said in my introduction, I grew up at camp. Camp is my thing. I love the outdoors, and I really, truly believe in the value of a summer camp experience for children, regardless of ability. I really wanted to be able to contribute to a positive atmosphere that was full of hope, that was going to help the families and the campers who at home are maybe the ones who are a little more left out, who are not able to relate to their peers, or who aren't having quite as fulfilling of an experience as some of the rest of the kids around get to. So I really wanted to help be able to give opportunities to those children and young adults.
Which is a wonderful quality about you personally, and I can honestly attest for British Columbia, this has got to be one of the most beautiful outdoor settings for any camp.
It really is
across
beautiful.
Canada.
Yeah.
Now, what is the philosophy of Zajac Ranch for Children?
Okay, so the philosophy is kind of multifaceted. We usually use the sentences that we want to empower through opportunities, we want to help our campers embrace the possibilities, and we want to help them experience the thrill of participating. So like I said earlier, a lot of the time the campers at home are maybe the odd one out. They feel a little bit different because they have to go to a hospital appointment every single week when their friends are playing video games and hanging out, or
yes,
they have to leave the classroom and not be with their friends because they need a little bit of extra support in the classroom. So we develop this really strong community of people who are feeling a little isolated and left out at home, and then we bring them together and they're with other people who understand exactly what they're going through. And more importantly, we don't have to talk anymore about what a doctor says about them and what label comes on a medical form.
Yes.
And we just talk about who they are and what they want to do, what they want to accomplish, and what they enjoy. So they just get to be a normal kid, which is a huge thing for a lot of our campers who don't get to feel normal very often at home.
Yes. So even though they're special, they're included with everybody else.
Yeah.
And so everybody's special at that camp.
Exactly. And we treat them as not special in that kind of you have extra needs way, but special in that you are worthwhile as a human being.
And that's what I meant.
Exactly,
and I don't want to be misinterpreted by what I meant.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Yeah.
And it is true. And for parents or people out there who don't have children with special needs, I think what you mentioned is a really good thing for other parents to know as well, that the majority of our children really have spent their childhood in hours and hours of therapy, where other children really have gone out there and been able to play with other children. So
exactly.
I think that's a really important fact that you mentioned, that where other people are aware of that.
And the other part is that all of our activities follow a therapeutic recreation model. So at each of our activities, say for instance, the high ropes course, they arrive, we talk to them about what do you want to accomplish? What is success for you in this activity? And it's certainly not as formal as I've just put it, because a 7-year-old with autism is not going to have that conversation with you.
Yes.
But we want to determine, like, are you terrified of high ropes? Are you super excited about high ropes? What is going to be success at this activity? So we help them to kind of set a little goal for themselves. How high do you want to get up? How many rungs of the ladder do you want to climb? And for some campers, it's just putting on the harness, and that's a huge deal. For some campers, it's just being 3 feet away from the high ropes course, and that's a huge deal. So that's something that we celebrate. So for instance, if your success is climbing up blindfolded and going across the high ropes course backwards, that's fine, but that's no more valuable than the camper who was terrified to put the harness on. So we set the goal, we encourage them to meet the goal, and then we celebrate it with them whenever they meet whatever their goal is. So success is very individualized during our programs.
And I think that's really important, because I know many people who have been to camp, typical camps. I mean, in-camp competitions with each other and all of that rivalry type of atmosphere seems to be completely eliminated, which, I mean, I would have appreciated that as a typical person when I was at camp, because I really think that every child needs to be celebrated in their achievements, because as you do say, heights could be an issue for one person, and so on. So the fact that you positively celebrate people, I think, is wonderful. And I really think other camps, maybe even typical camps, could learn a thing or two from that model, which is great.
Sure.
Now, what programs do you offer at the camp? You mentioned rope activities, but what other activities do you offer?
So we have a variety of programs. We have archery. We do swimming in our heated therapeutic pool, as well as outdoors in our lake.
Sounds lovely.
It is. We do canoeing and kayaking also in our lake. We certainly have an arts and crafts program. We have a high ropes course, like I mentioned, as well as a rock climbing wall. We do horseback riding. We have a therapeutic riding program.
Wow.
With 6, and I always say 6.5 horses, because one of them's a miniature pony. We do the typical camp activities in the evening. So we have campfires where we get to sing and dance and tell stories. We have talent shows every week, which is my favorite part of camp, because regardless of ability or regardless of what challenge you face at home, you get to decide what's special about you and what you want to share with everyone else. And everyone is so supportive of whatever it is that you want to share, whether it's something that would typically be accepted by society as a talent, or just something that is awesome about you that nobody knew. So that's my favorite part of camp, for sure.
It sounds awesome.
It's great. And then we do evening programs like scavenger hunts and things like that. And then lastly, we also have a leadership program. So we have a leadership in training as well as a counselor in training program. And this is the first year that we're differentiating between those two, which is something that I was really passionate about, because a lot of my camp experience has been working with leadership programs. Those campers who have experienced the camp experience a few times and want a little bit of an extra challenge, or they want to step up and take a bit of a leadership role with the younger campers and work on their leadership and communication and teamwork skills, can join us in the leadership and training program. And then those who are looking for maybe a future job as a counselor and really want to work on their kind of hard counseling skills, that's what we call them. So behavior management and things like that. So those who are a little bit more advanced and are going to be able to look into a future in being a camp counselor. they can join us as well in the counselor and training program.
Well, that sounds great. Basically, what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is the fact that if they've been to camp once, it means that every single year that they go to that camp, they can grow and develop and really move forward and grow into leadership and really develop all the skills so that they fully become who they can be and all the possibilities. It sounds like you really tap into the individual and bring them forth.
Absolutely. And yeah, we have a decent number of campers who maybe have an Asperger's diagnosis and would be hesitant to join student council or things like that at home, but really want to work on their communication with others or work on working in teams with others and really think that they have that potential to be a leader. They can apply for our leadership and training program, and we help to hone those skills while still being understanding that they're not necessarily going to express themselves all the same way. And so we have really, really great staff who are phenomenal at appreciating those differences and then also helping to develop the skills.
Well, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Now, what do you have in the way of facilities at the camp?
Okay, so we're on a 41-acre lot.
Beautiful.
It is beautiful, yeah. And so like I mentioned, we have a therapeutic swimming pool, so that is heated, and we also have...
Can parents come? I'm kidding. Go on.
We have our lake. It's not a private lake, but it's not very often are others on it.
Yes.
We have our high ropes course as well as a low ropes course, which we use for kind of team building activities and things like that. We have a gymnasium. We have an amphitheater, which is where we do our campfires and our talent shows. We have a barn and petting zoo. So the petting zoo has 3 goats and a donkey and some chickens and some rabbits. And I believe we're getting a new llama in the near future.
Wow.
It's great. And then we have a fully equipped medical center, which is a really big deal for a lot of our parents.
Absolutely.
And a dining hall that seats about 120, as well as a soccer field. And so our entire facility is wheelchair accessible.
Excellent.
Which is important, obviously, for our mandate. And then the medical center is really kind of the cornerstone of being able to do what we do, because a lot of our campers have medical diagnoses that they wouldn't be able to be away from home and away from their medical treatments, so they can just carry on with their treatment regimen while at camp, which is a fantastic asset.
Absolutely. Now, I was kidding later, but can families stay at the camp, or is it for participants only?
So we say typically that we don't want parents to join campers, and that's not to deny you of the fun, but to try and emphasize the benefit of going away to camp. So sometimes campers need personal support workers, and they're welcome to bring siblings or aunts or uncles or things like that. But we tend to discourage parents from coming, because then it kind of changes the dynamic between the counselor and the camper. The parent's not really sure where they fit in the role, and the staff aren't really sure where they fit in that either. So that makes it more challenging for everyone. It's also... We've let it happen a few times, and it has never gone well, really, because the camper misses out, I think, a lot on the experience of camp, because they're clinging to mom or they're clinging to dad, and they don't want to make new friends and build relationships with people who actually do understand what they're going through, and they don't want to try new things and branch out as much when mom is standing right there. So we typically discourage parents from joining us as well.
And correct me if I'm wrong, it also eliminates the experience of being really fully independent.
Absolutely.
For the participant, in the sense where I believe that what you're offering is a safe environment for participants to participate, where parents, I'm guilty of this included, clinging on to their child. So I think it's beneficial for participants, and it actually gives parents time away to allow them to process.
Absolutely. That's a huge part of what we offer, is that a lot of the time having a child with an autism diagnosis or a medical condition or whatever it is that is stopping them from being able to fully enjoy a typical summer camp, that's stressful for the parents, for sure. And it certainly impacts how they experience life. And so it's a huge deal to be able to have a week or 5 days to yourself, to not have to be worrying about every little detail. And now, of course, they're going to be worried about every little detail while they're away. But it's important. I think most of the conversations I have with parents are, but I can't let him go. He's never been away from me, or, but how will I know that he'll be well cared for, and things like that. And people, I totally understand that impulse. That absolutely makes sense. But our staff are quite well trained, and though a lot of the time parents feel as though they're the only one who understands their camper or their child's routine, and certainly that's true, but we work really hard to make sure that we understand what works for that camper even before they step foot on camp. And our staff are very well trained and very familiar with kind of best practices for dealing with campers who have any range of conditions or diagnoses.
And I can attest from my own child is that I know my child definitely does certain things at school that he doesn't do at home, and he's actually blown me away with what he's able to do on his own at school in front of his class, where in my head I never thought in a million years that he would be able to do some of the things. And I think that's really come from my having the ability to let go a bit and allow my son the opportunity to be independent and for somebody else to look after him. Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you come to see your campers with unbiased eyes, or
Absolutely.
so that it's a blank slate when they come to see you. Yeah. And therefore they're able to develop in ways, I think, where parents can't even imagine.
Yeah, we encourage them to do things because we don't know that camper would never do that. And it's okay if they don't want to, that's absolutely fine. But because we give them the benefit of the doubt that they'll be able to do that, then of course you'll be able to go, if you want to do this, you do it, that's fine.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah. And that's a huge part of the testimonials that we get as well, is that parents who weren't even really sure that their child was going to stay past day one were shocked that they got in a canoe, or shocked that they went anywhere near a high ropes course. And I think that's a huge part of the benefit of camp, is that they realize that my child can do all of these things that I had never dreamed.
Which is just fantastic. I know you're located over in Mission, but do you offer transportation to your location, or do the participants have to be driven to camp?
For the most part, parents are expected to supply transportation or drive their child to a camp facility. However, we do understand that sometimes this can be a limitation, and we certainly don't want to deny anyone the camp experience because of limitations with transportation. So that's certainly something to discuss with our registration coordinator, and then we can see if we can work something out. But typically, most parents do drive their child to camp.
That's great that there's actually another way if parents can't. Now, what type of challenges apply?
So there's a wide range of challenges and conditions, certainly. We have 2 camp sessions that are specific to campers with autism. We have sessions that apply to people with visual impairments, who have Down syndrome or cerebral palsy, who have epilepsy, who have a heart condition, or have recently had an organ transplant. Certainly just anyone who has a diagnosis that would limit them from being able to participate in a typical camp experience, or the parents would be kind of extra sensitive to sending them away for a camp session because they're not sure that either the staff are going to be able to handle it or that the facilities are going to be up to par. So we're pretty open to diagnoses. We have a couple of mixed medical camps where it's not specific to conditions, so kind of anyone who would benefit from our camp experience is welcome. So certainly, if you're not sure if your child's condition applies, just get in touch with our office, and they can give you some better ideas.
And all of those details will be on the autism30.com webpage. Now, how do you accommodate all of the type of challenges you offer? Physical, nonverbal, sensitivity, the scheduling. How do you accommodate all of those?
Right. I think what's most important to me as the camp director, and I put that through to my staff, is that everyone's camp experience is individual. So I think a lot of the time we get hooked on, but it's time for high ropes. They have to go to high ropes kind of thing. But it's as long as they're having a positive camp experience, I don't mind whether they're actually participating in activities, if they're actually eating where you're supposed to eat. So we take people out of more intense and more kind of sensory overload situations fairly regularly if they're being bothered by it, or we know in advance that they will be bothered by it. We certainly can just take them out and we'll have lunch at the picnic table, that kind of thing. So that's really important. We do things like like visual schedules.
Yes.
We do things like set up pylines and very specific marking points. So everyone who is ready to go stand over there on the blue piece of tape,
Yes.
so that people know where to stand, things like that. So we're very kind of in touch with what's going to work best. Best practices, certainly for campers with autism as well as with other limitations. We do quite an intensive staff training. So we have 10 full days of staff training where we talk about all of the conditions that we typically see and best practices for all of them, as well as how to handle difficult behaviors.
Yes.
If someone's having a meltdown and that happens, and that's totally okay, we talk about how to handle that.
Yes.
We also have a snoozling room on site.
And what's that exactly?
It's kind of a controlled sensory environment. So it's in our medical
Lovely.
center. It's kind of soundproofed so that you can't hear all of the noises from outside and see all of the things from outside. And then it has some different lights and things that feel cool and little projections that go on the ceiling so that you can decide what you want to look at, what you want to feel, what you want to hear. And that's really, really helpful for calming people down, especially in a situation where it's just kind of sensory overload.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing is that our camper to staff ratio is certainly unparalleled, especially at a typical camp. So the minimum ratio ever is that we have 3 campers per adult. Which is very, very, very low.
Yes.
Comparatively. And then on the registration form, we talk very in depth about all of the different needs of each camper, whether that's behaviorally, whether it's bedtime, how does bedtime go, how do meal times go, and what kind of supervision do they require. So if that's 1-to-1, then we make it 1-to-1. If it's 2-to-1, then we're going to have an extra adult in that cabin. And if they're going to be fine with 3-to-1, then 3-to-1 is quite a small ratio,
Yes.
so that will be fine. So we have a number of our counselors who we call Zajac Ranch 1-to-1s, and we offer them each week to just be 1-to-1s for campers who need that extra support. And then we also allow people to bring their own personal support workers, for sure.
Oh, that's great.
Absolutely. So that means that if someone is a flight risk,
Yes.
we're going to be watching them a little bit more carefully. If someone is nonverbal and just needs a little bit of help with communication, or just needs someone to stand by the communication device to kind of translate what's happening,
Yes.
then that's going to be something that we'll be able to do. They're very familiar with those kinds of challenges. We talk through communication devices. We talk through being a flight risk, and we go through our missing camper drill over and over and over again to make sure that it's okay. And yeah, I think just overall, the whole philosophy is that the camp experience is individual. So it's fine if you don't participate in a single activity, but you really are enjoying yourself sitting near the activities or saying the 4 words to another camper each day. And
Yes.
that might be huge and groundbreaking for one camper. Whereas,
It certainly can be.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a big part of what we do.
And you mentioned your staff training, the 10 days, but what are the qualifications that staff members have?
So they are typically, for the most part, university students who are taking relevant programs. So that might be they're doing a degree in therapeutic recreation. They might be working on a degree in kinesiology or psychology or occupational therapy. So a lot of them have coursework in these areas, so that's really helpful. They're all trained in first aid.
Yes.
Most of them will have experience working with people with disabilities, and most of them will have experience working with children in general in recreational settings. Then, of course, our lifeguards are certified to be lifeguards. Our ropes instructors are certified to be ropes instructors. And then, like I said, that 10-day staff training, you can fit a lot of things into like 12 hours a day for 10 days.
Yes,
so
you can.
We make sure that they're very familiar with all of the things that are going to be most important to help them be successful with all of our campers.
Now, what are the particular safety measures that are in place to guarantee safety for participants?
Okay, so staff training is going to be a big part of that as well. We offer our ropes training on our specific high ropes course to make sure that we're familiar with all of the ins and outs of our ropes course. All of our buildings and facilities, of course, are inspected
Yes.
and meeting those codes. AdventureWorks, who is in charge of our ropes course, does an annual high ropes inspection there. And then 24-hour-a-day medical care is a huge thing.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, so we have volunteer doctors or nurses as well as a paid full-time nursing director. So the nursing director, will go through all of the applications of doctors and nurses to make sure that we are fully equipped. So 24 hours a day, someone is available to give meds or to help out in case of an emergency, or just help out because someone has maybe just had a seizure or is just not feeling very well.
So the participants don't necessarily have to be transferred to have medical attention.
No.
It's right there for them
Exactly.
at the camp.
Yeah. And
Excellent.
then the camper to staff ratio is going to be a huge part of the safety measures as well. Certainly we go through, like I said, our missing camper drill or missing camper procedures, as well as things like fire procedures and waterfront emergency procedures over and over again to make sure that our staff are very familiar with the procedures to follow in the case of an emergency.
That's great. Now, when is the registration date?
Applications just need to be in 6 weeks before each camp session. So for instance, if you're looking to register for the last session of the summer, then you can certainly register a little bit later than if you're trying to register for the first camp of the summer. So to be guaranteed a spot, you need to have an application in 6 weeks before the start date of camp. After that, we sometimes charge a late registration fee because it's a little more stressful for us to get through all of that. And then you might be added to a wait list, for instance, if you kind of are on the later side of things for registration.
Which basically means be on time, people, if you want to get a guaranteed spot. Now, are participants guaranteed admission to the program if they register? And what's the selection process?
The process is that the registration form will come in and they'll be reviewed by our nursing director first and foremost. So just for safety reasons, we need to make sure that we'll be able to meet the needs of each of our campers and that none of our campers are going to compromise the safety of any of the rest of our campers.
Absolutely.
So we do review all of that. Our camps do have a capacity, and that differs depending on the week.
Of course.
For instance, 150 campers with autism is too many campers with autism at once.
I would agree.
So certainly we have a wait list for if we go over capacity. Mm-hmm. And then the only thing that really is pressing is the Zajac one-to-ones, because we have a limited number of our staff members who we can offer up as one-to-one counselors.
Yes.
So if you are feeling like your child would really benefit from having one-to-one support, and you don't really have anyone at home to send along with them, then it's important to get your application in a little bit sooner, because if we only have 4 spots, those fill up more quickly. And then there's a waiting list for that as well. But typically, we very rarely turn campers away. But like I said, it's only in the case of safety. If we're not going to be able to ensure that this camper is safe, or if we're not going to be able to ensure the safety of our other campers because this camper is here.
Absolutely. Now, do all people with autism qualify, considering it's such a wide spectrum?
Yeah. So the same thing that I said before, really, the only obstacle would be if this camper has a history of violent outbursts or things like that, where we can't really guarantee that everyone else is going to be safe.
Yes.
But otherwise, as long as we're going to be able to meet their needs and the needs of all the other campers, we have quite a number of campers who are completely nonverbal. We have quite a number of campers who have Asperger's, and you would have no idea in conversation with them, and everyone in between. So there's certainly no limitations.
What's the minimum and maximum age that you can apply?
We have exciting new developments in this area, actually. So for most of our camps, the minimum age is 7 years old, and the maximum age is 17 years old. But we have 2 young adult camps. So the first one is for campers age 18 to 30. We certainly recognize that.
Great.
Yeah, it is great that a lot of people age out of the system and don't have access to nearly as many resources as they once did.
That's so true.
Yeah, and we hate that. So we want to be able to
yes,
give,
we do.
we want to be able to give people that experience still. And then our second young adult camp, which is our last week of the summer, it used to be aged 18 to 40, but we're taking away that upper age limit this year. Because I've had I think probably 10 people who were 42 last year wanting to come.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm excited about that.
Approximately how costly are the programs?
So the programs, the total cost for us in order for per camper to provide the 24-hour day medical care and to pay all of our staff and feed everybody and to maintain the cost of upkeep for our facilities, which have to be fairly state-of-the-art to make sure that they're
of course
in working condition, is about $1,400. Now, that is a lot of money. So we have the Zajac Camper Allowance Program, which cuts that entirely in half so that every single camper pays half price.
Wow.
And then we also have a number of funding options and subsidy options. So we have the Zajac Partner Subsidy Program, which means that there are a number of businesses and organizations that support us, and they offer up money to help campers come to camp. And then we also,
great.
It is, yeah. And then we also have our own financial assistance program. So you just need to submit some paperwork, and then we can determine, based on this income, we need to be able to help this camper by this percentage in order to come to camp. So it's a pay what you can kind of situation.
Okay.
But certainly we don't want cost to stand in the way of campers joining us.
Which is really great. Mm-hmm. Can people with autism who qualify for autism funding from the British Columbia government use their funding to participate, as some of the various programs that may incur an extra cost, including the registration fee?
So yes, we can use autism funding to pay for the registration fee. However, I believe the situation is that if you're going to use autism funding, you're not also eligible for the Zajac Camper Allowance program.
Okay.
So it's the full cost of the program to use autism funding, or it's the Zajac Camper Allowance plus the other subsidy programs, and then you get to use your autism funding for other things.
But so if you have to use the autism funding, that would cover the entire cost, right?
It would, yeah.
Oh, okay. Just to be clear, what do you consider to be the benefits of participating in your program?
So certainly building confidence. We give campers the opportunity to try things they never would have the opportunity to try at home. So I've seen lots of people get up on a horse for the very first time, particularly if they're bound to a wheelchair. That's something that's huge for them. Or go up on the ropes course while being kind of bound to the ground or to the wheelchair. So trying new things is huge. We've also had a lot of feedback that campers are maybe more confident to raise their hand in class, because I didn't think that I could get into a canoe and paddle. And I could. I proved to myself that I could. So I could probably answer that math question too.
Yes.
And so we've definitely seen a direct correlation between those things. Independence is huge, being away from mom and dad, and having people who will still do all the things for you, but maybe not necessarily everything for you. They'll encourage you to find your shoes. They'll help you to find your shoes, but they won't necessarily go get your shoes for you. So that's huge. We build a community for them, like I talked about before, so they don't feel so alone, and they get to build these really positive relationships with other people who understand where they're coming from. And we teach them that they're more than what the doctor says about them, which is my favorite part.
Absolutely, and I agree.
Mm-hmm. And then we also build an appreciation for the outdoors and being outside. They spend almost all of their days outside during camp. So people who are maybe a little bit more confined inside and they just want to play video games or use their iPad all day, that's not really an option at camp. So they're outside, and we've certainly heard from parents later that their child wanted to play outside more instead of just being inside. So we've gotten years worth of amazing parent testimonials, and some of those you'll find on our website that really show what kind of a difference our program makes.
And their website details will be on the autism30.com webpage. What are the future goals for Zajac Ranch for children?
So first and foremost, it's making sure that cost is not going to be an obstacle for any family. So we want to make it so that no camper has to pay for camp. Unfortunately, we're not in a position to do that just yet, but we're working on it. We're certainly doing some fundraising and getting donations from places. So that is important. We also want to increase our campership, so we want all of our camps to be at the limit, full to the brim, and if possible, lift our capacity a little bit. We're making some new exciting developments in our facilities as well. They are kind of halfway, about in the middle of building an Aboriginal Arts and Culture Center on our site right now.
Lovely.
Which looks beautiful, and that's coming along quite well. There's also talks about adding some tree houses, and as well as a zip line in the near future. So those are
so much fun.
Exactly, those are exciting things too.
If someone wants to join, what's the procedure? What paperwork must be completed and sent in?
So all of our registration forms are on the website, which you'll be able to find on the Autism 30 website. So it's a fairly extensive registration form, because we want to make sure that we're entirely familiar with the needs of each camper before they join us. It does include a form that needs to be filled out by a medical professional as well. Our medical professionals need it direct from the source, directly from other medical professionals, so they understand what's required.
Of course.
And then there's a pretty pretty intensive kind of behavioral questionnaire so that we understand what kind of support your child needs. So it's not a short form, but it's a really necessary form so that we understand all of what's required. And then that will of course include payment and subsidy information as well. So all of that is all in one place on our website.
But I think it's also a testimony to you that you do require a long form, because, I mean, that puts confidence in the parents that you really do take the care of the participants seriously.
Absolutely. And then at the end of each session, we fill out a form ourselves as well. So the counselors who are working with that child fill out how did things go at bedtime? How did things go at meal times? What did the camper enjoy? What did they try that was new? That might be a perspective that the parents don't really have because they haven't seen them away from themselves, obviously. So that's really helpful too. So each year, every counselor gets to look through and see what past counselors have experienced with that camper as well.
So there is a lot of recording and data.
Absolutely there is. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Mm-hmm. For our international listeners who may want to start a program of their own, what would you advise them to do?
Firstly, I would just have them figure out what the need in their community is. What is the need that's not being met? And then from there, you'll figure out what kind of program will fill that need. So I would advise them to partner with other nonprofit organizations or medical organizations a lot of the time in our case, and then get to work applying for grants. Certainly you need to raise money to be able to do any of these kinds of endeavors. So,
that's very true.
Yeah.
If someone wants to get involved, how do they proceed and what minimum qualifications do they need to have?
So our staff deadline for applications just passed for this year, but certainly if you want to be involved as a staff member for 2017, get looking on our website in December or January. We're certainly still looking for volunteers for this summer, so that all of that information is also available on our website. Please come join us as a volunteer if you have a week or two to spare during the summer. People can also come as personal support workers. So even if you don't have maybe a specific child that you're working with at home, but you'd like to offer your services to families who are having trouble finding someone, certainly get in touch with us and we can put families in touch with you.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. And then we train all of our staff, all of our volunteers, and we make sure that personal support workers are quite familiar with the procedure beforehand. We don't necessarily train personal support workers who are not our own to work with your child, so that's something that would need to go between families and the personal support worker.
Of course.
And then certainly everyone who is on site has a criminal record check, which is clean.
Yes, and that's important to mention, yes. What do you find rewarding about your job? I mean, I think it's obvious, but what would you like to tell our listeners?
Yeah, there's so much about it. I get to play outside in the woods with kids all day, which is fantastic. I get to watch campers try things for the first time that they felt like they would never be able to do, which has been a huge eye-opening experience for me. I've learned so much from the huge variety of people that I've gotten to interact with. I've gotten to build really strong relationships with like-minded staff who want to make a difference and are passionate about helping people, and made really strong relationships with a lot of our campers too, who I'm so excited to see back this year. I've learned so many new skills, and I've really gotten to experience the hope that we help to cultivate, I guess. I think I was doing an interview with a returning staff member who was a former camper of ours. And one of the questions I asked is, if you could choose one thing for each of our campers to leave with at the end of their camp session, what would it be? And his answer was one word, and it was hope. Because that's what he experienced as a child at camp, that he could go home and it wasn't as dismal for him, or it wasn't as upsetting to go through all of the things he had to go through, because he knew he had Zajac Ranch and he had the people he had met and he had those skills that he didn't really get to explore at home. So that's a huge thing.
That's really beautiful.
It is, yeah. And the parent testimonials that we get they break my heart and make me smile so widely every time I read them. So those are really quite rewarding to
So they really are your children.
You get to establish quite a connection with them. I mean, we had 356 campers last year, so there's certainly, I have met them all and have experienced something with them all, but certainly I've gotten to spend more time with some than others. But you really get to experience what each of them contributes to the entirely positive camp atmosphere.
Is there something you'd like our listeners to know about Zajac Ranch for Children that we have not yet mentioned?
Yeah, something that is new this year that we're doing is we're having an open house for new prospective families. So it was brought up to me actually at an autism support group that I came to speak at, that it was ridiculous to a lot of families to send their child, especially if they had autism, away to a place they had never seen.
Yes.
And that totally makes sense. So we're planning on April 3rd from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock p.m. We're inviting new families. Unfortunately, it's not for returning campers to come spend more time at camp, but we're working on things like that right now too. That they can come out, they can have a tour, they can meet our registration coordinator, they can play some games with our staff and see where they'll sleep and where they will eat and have a look at the waterfront. And that is going to help them to familiarize themselves and not be so anxious on the first day of camp. So that's something I'm really excited about, and it's happening April 3rd again. And that information will be on our website, which again you can find on the Autism 30 website.
And I think it's also great that you actually are actively involved in the autism community in the Lower Mainland of Vancouver, and I should say the Lower Mainland of British Columbia, in the sense that you do actively go to different workshops and different events and speak to parents. And what you're letting our listeners know is that you really do listen to what the needs and concerns are of the parents, and you incorporate that into your ideas and to the whole camp itself.
Absolutely. And so if there's anyone out there who's part of a group or knows of a group of parents that could benefit from knowing a little bit more and wants me or someone else to come out and have a chat, certainly get in touch with me and I'd be happy to.
Now, the final question that we have is, what is the one thing you would like our public to know about autism?
So this is probably not at all groundbreaking to most of your listeners, but my favorite sentence about autism is, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism.
That's my favorite too.
So it's that's kind of the whole basis of our staff training around autism, that just because what you've seen on TV because you met one kid with autism when you were in grade 3, that doesn't mean you know anything about people with autism as a whole, and nothing can be applied to the entire group of people who happen to identify or happen to have a diagnosis that says they're on the autism spectrum. So everyone is entirely individual. Everyone's needs, everyone's skills, everything that they can contribute to the world and to society is entirely different. Just because a doctor says the same thing about them doesn't mean anything at all. So that's something that I wish people understood better.
I wish so too.
Yeah.
Well, I really want to thank you, Tiffany, for joining us today. Your passion and dedication to your job is inspiring, and I hope more people are able to attend a camp such as Zajac.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
I want to thank Tiffany for being with us and sharing her knowledge with us today. We also want to remind you to subscribe and join our mailing list to receive information about upcoming podcasts and information. And if you're listening to us on iTunes, don't forget to write us a review and like us and join us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google+. And don't forget to send in your questions if you want to ask our parent panel or myself questions. Please send us an email and we'd love to address and answer them. You can do so from our webpage at autism30.com and click the word contact. Once again, thank you, our podcast audience, for joining us. And until next time, this is Tally telling you to live in love.
Hey yo, I'm an autism awareness angel, making sure my wings protect the different, the stranger than. I'm an autism awareness angel. It's good, cause I'm cool with the unique behavior. I'm an autism awareness angel. Will you accept me? Cause I accept you. I'm an autism awareness angel, cause the view from the spectrum is a better point of view.